Hi, this is Anna Imagination of the Healing Garden. I'm going to go ahead and really take this perspective scope and we're going to focus it right on something that's not known about or talked about called the Oasis. The Oasis is easily the death sentence of a healing journey. There is really no other way to put it. It is the death sentence of a healing journey. The Oasis is the delusion that you're healed when you're not. I fell into the Oasis. I think everyone does. I think it's part of the trial. I think it's absolutely part of the trial. And no one talks about the Oasis. It is non-existent in our knowledge base. And I realized being warned about the Oasis early on really, really can go a long way to help people identify when they're falling into the Oasis so they can recognize the delusion and they can get out. A great example of the Oasis in story term is in the movie Land Before Time, when they've been journeying for so long and they get to this grove of trees and they go, "It's the Great Valley. We found it. I found it." And then a herd of dinosaurs comes in, eats all the groves and leaves. And there's nothing left. And they're like, "Oh, the Great Valley, it's gone." And someone says, "No, that was not true. That was not the Great Valley." That's the Oasis. People can get caught in the Oasis for a year, 10 years, a lifetime. It is the death sentence of a healing journey. The people who are in this space have very visible symptoms of PTSD that are invisible to the self. The problem with the Oasis is 100% of your symptoms become invisible to the self. So there's two healing journeys. There's where you start to the Oasis, and then there's from the Oasis to the actual end of the healing journey. And the difference and the change that goes between from the point of origin up to that Oasis is things are really, really bad. We see this with a lot of trauma victims who think in relativity, wow, I've come so far and things are so much better. And so they think that they're healed. Everything is top of the line, everything's awesome, but actually it's not. And when shit hits the fan, that's how you realize, oh, it's not really that awesome. The Oasis makes everything look awesome, but then you hit the Oasis and you are running, you're keeping yourself busy. Everything does feel and look good because in relativity, you've come a long way. And here's the delusion. Here's the very first clue. If you're comparing your life to your trauma, you're in the Oasis. If you are comparing your current situation to your trauma, you're in the Oasis. When you're actually healed, you forget the trauma ever happened. You're not comparing anymore. If you're comparing how your life is to where you've come from, you're in the Oasis. Because when you're healed, you stop comparing. You forget that you ever were traumatized. That's the biggest marker to tell if you're in the healing, if you're in the Oasis, or if you're actually healed. The other huge characteristic to determine this is if people keep telling you that you are mentally ill or you need healing, you need healing. When people are healed, they don't tell you you need help. They tell you, wow, you are amazing and holy shit, this is awesome and you are really awesome to be around. But if people keep trying to fix you, you're in the Oasis and you don't know it. That's the second huge factor. And it's because 100% of your symptoms are invisible in the Oasis. I really need to do like a whole, like a quiz to show people like, when I was in the Oasis, I was on top of the world. I was high energy. I was running all over the place. I was so excited. And if I paused to relax, my mind would drift back to thoughts on the trauma. I often thought about how far I've come. I was constantly comparing. I was constantly looking for signs of trauma in others, constantly looking for, constantly hands-on. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't stop shaking. If you have ADHD, you're not healed. You are absolutely not healed. ADHD is related to PTSD. If you are energetic, if you are shaking, if you are constantly moving, if you can't sit still, you're in the Oasis. ADHD, neurodivergence, there are two types of characteristics, and this is where there's these delusions that we've been told by our culture. But our culture is run by people who are an IQ of 100. So all the information we have reflects the IQ of 100. And if you're neurodivergent, your IQ is at least 140. So when your IQ hits 140, you start thinking different. You start being different. And if you try and listen or conform to the advice or the knowledge that was produced by people with IQs of 100, it's going to create ADHD symptoms. And if you really want to break down the frequency of it, so every one of these perspectives, every one of these IQs, there's a grouping and there's a frequency that is omitted. In physics, when you have a frequency, you live by a certain frequency, which is why people who have a higher frequency run hot. People who have a lower frequency run cold. And when you when you are intelligently up here at this frequency, but you're being forced to think and live over here at this frequency, you start to shake because physics says so. That's in out-of-phase signals literally vibrating against each other, which is what ADHD is. It's because you have somebody at a higher frequency being forced to shrink and compress their energy at a lower frequency. We see this in physics all the time. That's when vibration starts to happen. So when a person's electromagnetic field has been stopped and or derailed or compressed, ADHD results. ADHD is not a symptom of intelligence. ADHD is a symptom of abused suppression of somebody who's intelligent. And one of the things I see regularly is characteristics of an intelligent person, characteristics of somebody who's been abused, and characteristics of somebody who is living in the Oasis. People who live in the Oasis have the same characteristics as people who've been abused. People who are intelligent have these characteristics, and they are the same characteristics that match people who live in the Oasis and people who've been abused. The problem is the people who live in the Oasis cannot tell the difference between these are my intelligent symptoms, which is just intelligence, versus this is my abuse. So they mistake trauma and abuse symptoms for genius symptoms. Not the same thing, not at all. When you hit the Oasis, you are only 40% of your way through the healing journey. Now, to get to 40% feels like 120%. To get to 40% is grueling. It is extraneous, which is why when you hit the Oasis, you get a wave of relief. And that's the problem, is when you hit the Oasis, you're going to get a massive wave of relief. And you notice that you can function. And that between the relief and the function, you think, I'm better, I'm okay. You can function, you have relief, but you are only 40% of the way through the journey. Consistently, I have seen this. I went through it myself. And it wasn't until I got all the way through that I went, oh, this is the difference. So this is how you know you are healed. There is zero comparison. You stop trying to explain yourself. That's a big one. You stop trying to explain yourself. You forget that you ever were traumatized. You think you were always born normal. That's a big one. You think you were always born normal. It's not until a trauma scar comes up that you go, why do I have a trauma scar? Oh yeah, I was abused. That's healed. that's healed. When you look at your own behavior and go, why am I doing that? Oh yeah, I was traumatized. I forgot. That's healed. If you're not doing that, you're probably in the oasis. You are probably in the oasis. The other issue we have is there are so few people who've been all the way through the healing journey that when they hit the oasis, they see a lot of people who are in the oasis. So they think, oh, this is what healed looks like. No. If you are looking for symptoms of trauma, you're in the oasis. If you are constantly vigilant and you've got all these defense tactics built up to ensure you can function, you're not okay. You're in the oasis. A person who's healed doesn't need a survival book. And that's it. There's a survival book that you've developed so that when you're in the oasis, you have a survival book. You've mastered the survival book so well that that you can function, but you're dependent on the survival book. You've got all these things, all these characteristics that you're using as crutches to make sure that you have relief and function. But if you put down the survival book, it all falls apart. A huge characteristic of people who are in the oasis is to get out of the oasis, or that moment that you wake up and realize, oh shit, I'm not healing. And oh God, I hear this so many times. I said this myself. It was, I thought I was healed. You have your life together. Everything is perfectly fine for you. And then shit hits the fan. And when shit hits the fan, you lose your shit. And all the old problems that you thought were resolved come back. We think it's regression. We think it's regression. And we think, I don't understand. How can all this come back? I'm healed. Why is this still a problem? And then you've got to realize and accept that you never were healed. You were in the oasis. And when this is what I love. This is my favorite part of this. You start to raise your standards on your own lifestyle. And then you project yourself into the future and you see what it actually looked like. And then you go, oh, I've got this. Oh my God, I have so much more work to do. And then you go through the grieving stage and the hatred and all the anger and rage of yourself that you still have all of this work to do and you feel exhausted. And then there's the, I don't want to leave the oasis. I don't want to get into that. I want to stay right. I don't want to go back to that. And then you do, and you get through it. But this time you're so fucking pissed and you've mastered it that you roll up your sleeves and you push through it. That's when you get through the remaining 60%. There is no, in my experience, there is no oasis between the oasis and the healed point. So understanding when you run into that oasis is really vital. Now, I really want to impart this on you if you have not started your healing journey. Like, this is so vital, because everyone who gets to the oasis thinks they're done, because there's relief, and I mean waves of relief, like relief, and you can function. And you think, oh, that's it, I'm done. No, no. Enjoy the oasis, take a breather, but don't get too comfortable. Because if you really want happiness, you got a ways to go. You should be using your imagination. If your imagination is not turned on and functioning, you are in the oasis. People who are healthy have imagination. They can understand abstract. They can understand games. They can understand make-believe. They can understand metaphor. If you struggle with these things, you're in the oasis. These are things that healthy people have. It's part of problem solving. Just because you problem solve without them does not mean you're healed. Quite the opposite. I wish somebody had told me about my oasis. I was in mine for 2 years. I was in my oasis for 2 years. From 2020 to 2022, I was in my oasis. I was on top of the world. I was euphoric. If you are feeling the emotions of others, you're not healed. You're in the oasis. You are absolutely in the oasis. There's definitely 3 stages. There's the trauma, and then there's the oasis, And then there's the actual status of healed. But because people are black and white thinking, another symptom that you're in the Oasis is you're still thinking in twos, trauma or healed. The Oasis introduces you to the third option, which is halfway there, not even halfway, 40% there. You feel amazing, but you're not okay. And you have all these things that you've put in place to keep your head above water. And you think you're fine because you're functioning until your ship goes down. A person who lives in the Oasis, when their ship goes down, panics, shoots people for the extra lifeboats, panics. They feel out of control and overwhelmed. Often. People who are healed, when the ship goes down, we sit back and we enjoy the view, and then we lay back in the ocean and we float. That's healed. There is no panicking ever. We never feel overwhelmed. We never feel overwhelmed because we are 20 steps ahead of panic and overwhelm. Yeah, that's a big one right there. There's never any overwhelm. Emotions are on a gambit. So that the emotions are way over here and they're like level 8s and 10s. And if you are living so that you are still feeling 6s, 10s, 9s in emotions, like I want you right now, this is it. You've got, imagine scale of, let's do 1 to 10. 10 being, I can't control my emotions and they are all over the place and I feel them intense, versus 1, I don't feel them at all. Think of that number. I'm going to give you a minute. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put your sensitivity? When you're healed, they're a 1. Always. No matter what. They're a 1. You feel feelings, not emotions. If you are feeling your feelings and they are more than 3, you're in the Oasis. Or you have a lot of work to do. Like you're at 0. You're at ground 0 or you're in the Oasis. When you are healed, your emotions no longer are needed. They're not there. Emotions are consequences to dysregulation. Dysregulation, self-regulation, is a skill. It is not something you just get. It's a skill you learn. And it requires courage and self-authority. If you are not using the skills, courage and self-authority, then you're not going to have self-regulation. Self-regulation requires courage and self-authority. Once you get courage and self-authority, then you can learn the skill self-regulation. But if you lack courage and self-authority, you're not going to do it. Now, self-authority means you don't have a problem going, yeah, I fucked that up. I did that. I don't let people do that. I have my own self-control. I have my own self-law. This is somebody who's healthy. Somebody who's not healthy is constantly running all over the place in a whirlwind trying to maintain control, because the control is the delusion. They don't have any control because they lack self-authority. Control only comes from self-authority. Only. If you are angry, if you are vengeful, if you are spiteful, you're not healed. If you wish ill on other people, you're not healed. You're in the Oasis. These are all symptoms of you're only 40% healed. And there's going to be that moment where you feel this wave of, it's literally a wave of relief and euphoria and function. And here's the clue. You should not be feeling the emotion euphoria. If you're healed, you don't feel euphoria. Healed means, I'm going to say unemotionalist living, but it's not that, it's the intensity. It's the emotions are still there, but they're not intense. They don't have to be. Because when you feel the emotion at 1.5, you go, ooh, I'm having an emotion. I need to address it. So you're addressing emotions at 1.5 instead of 8. That's the difference. You still feel emotions. It's just you've done so much preemptive work that you've got your emotions. So emotions are just symptoms. If you are feeling the emotions of someone else, if you are claiming to be an empath, you're in the Oasis. You haven't done the work. You're only 40% through. You should never feel the emotions of others. You should never feel the emotions of others. I was speaking to this one person, and she was off the charts with her emotions. I felt her exude. I immediately put the shield up and immediately put myself into an objective point of view, and I felt nothing from her. So I was able to completely disconnect from her story, keep myself in my own story, and it turned it into an unemotional television where I could watch her go about her whole story while I sat far separated on my own, watching her story unfold without having any emotional wave come over me. And that is healed. When you have the ability to immediately recognize, well, this person is emotional and really out of control, I'm going to go ahead and put up that boundary, that objective wall, keep myself in my own story and observe. And it was assess, observe, learn, deduce, and absolutely remain impartial to her experience. This is healthy. If you can't do that, you're in the Oasis. You are only 40% healed. So I'm going to be doing a whole lot. I'm going to be doing a lot on this because preparing for the Oasis is vital to you getting to your happiness and health. Now, here's the problem. This is the big problem. If you are in the Oasis and you have children, it's common for people to parent their children with their mental illnesses and not know it. This individual told me some parenting things she was doing with her children, where she was training her children how to think in trauma without even knowing it. She had conditioned her children to be traumatic, and she was consciously teaching them how to do it without even knowing it. She was teaching her children unconsciously PTSD. That is the danger of the Oasis. And because she thought she was healed, she wasn't completely unaware. She was literally grooming her children consciously with these tactics, not knowing it was PTSD. When I say dangerously ignorant, I mean it. So we're going to be doing a whole lot of courses just focusing on the Oasis, what to look for, how to know when you've left it, how to know that you are in the Oasis. If you are in the Oasis and you think you're okay, there's a good chance you're not going to be here. The people who are here are the people who are looking for healing because they know something's up. People who are in the Oasis do not know that something is up. I cannot emphasize this to you enough. There's one more real horror about the Oasis. And this is where I fell into it. After everything is all done and you've resolved everything, that is when you can finally see your own narcissism. So it's common to heal everything except narcissism. And then after you're in the Oasis at your breaking point, that's when the narcissism sinks its teeth into you. It is really, it's like a last, it's the boss fight. That's really what it is. It's the boss fight. Oh, that is exactly what it is. That is exactly what it is. The boss fight. And there's going to, that is exactly it. That is perfect. So you've got this Oasis You got 40% of the healing journey. You've got the Oasis. And then you've got the next part. Now, I'm going to be blunt. The Oasis is the valley of shadow and death. The next part after that is the valley of shadow and death. The first 12 stages of healing is the 40%. The second stage is the valley of shadow and death. That's when it gets really fucking hard. And then at the end of that, you've got the boss fight. And when you overcome the boss fight, that's when you're healed. And most people will hit the Oasis and think they're done. No, not even a little bit. And then when they realize they've got all the healing to do, they move on to the next stage. And when they move on to the next stage, they end up with, you're doing great. And you're literally, it's like climbing a mountain. You see the end of the light. And just as you are exhausted and bleeding, you hit the boss fight. So you go into the boss fight unprepared, exhausted, ragged, ripped apart, and torn. And then you win. So that boss fight can take a few months. The boss fight alone can take a few months. And then when you emerge, that's when you're healed. And it's when you have no anger. It's when you have no, let me put it to you this way. This is another way that I explained it. I was feeling myself getting angry yesterday. Like I said, you still feel the emotions, but I recognized it. I was caught in a venting loop. Venting loops are a red flag. You should not be caught in venting loops. If you have to constantly vent, if you're constantly angry, that's the red flag. So I started to notice the signs of the venting loop. And I went, whoa, 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 let's pause everything. Step back. Why am I in a venting loop? What's going on? And I started to pull it apart and I realized, oh, I'm angry because I idolized psychologists and I still had them on a pedestal, expecting them to save me, expecting them to save the world, expecting them to be here at the front lines to help people, and they're not. So I'm disappointed in them. I am disappointed in my idols. I now have fallen idol. So I'm actually going through the grieving stages of the fallen idol. And I know that's easy peasy psychology. So that's 5 stages. We all know this. I'm in the anger stage. Well, I know how to handle that. So I went, okay, I'm in the anger stage of the fallen idol grief. Okay, so I just need to adjust my expectations of they need to get off of the pedestal. They are no longer on the pedestal. I need to lower my expectations of psychologists. They are malicious and or they are ignorant and or it's I don't think the ones who mean well are not aware of what side they're on. And I hate to say side, but well, when they're preying on the mentally ill, there's a side. And I really hate the idea of sides. I don't like sides at all. But this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm working through. And when you're healed, you work through it. You don't get caught up in the anger. You don't get caught up on the vent loop. You take a step back and you assess, where am I going to put this situation so that my perspective is properly relative to it so I know what to expect? How do I adjust my perspective and the expectations so I have a realistic, I don't like that word, so I have an actualized understanding of what I can expect from this group? And that's healed. That is healed. When you can calmly, logically assess the behavior, assess the situation, and make your plans accordingly, create new personal laws, boundaries, create new expectations, create new plan, instead of being swept away by the emotions of the vent and the hate and the anger. And that's the difference between healed and living in the Oasis. People who live in the Oasis are still, they'll get swept away by their anger and not realize that they're in a vent loop. They will fuel their anger. They will talk about it. Whereas somebody who's healed will use that anger as a clue, come down off the anger, and then they will strategize and problem solve it to decrease the anger because they're putting it into applicable action. That's healed. So when you start to really take a step back and you are walking into your healing journey, be aware of the oasis. Because once you get into the oasis and you are not aware of the oasis, you are going to, and here's the problem. This is the other one. If you are closed-minded, you're in the oasis. If you're open-minded, you're healed. Closed-minded people who are in the oasis, will close their mind off to hearing about solutions or people. If you are not open to listen, learn, and receive, you're in the oasis. Because closed is defensive, and that is not absorbing that second ethic. The second ethic is open to receive. And if you're not open to receive, you don't have self-authority, you don't have self-regulation, you're not healed. So if you are closed off, it's when you decide, I'm healed, I don't have anything else to learn, and you close off. Now, you might need to close off so you can recover and rest. That's the purpose of the oasis. But remember, you're only 40% done. And when you get to that point, this is so important. This is so important. It's the difference between literally the death of your healing journey versus you consciously taking this stage of your healing journey and going, all right, so here's where I can lounge in the lap of luxury for 6 months to a year. Take a break, but be mindful that you're not done. That's the oasis. I'm going to go ahead, create some articles. I'm going to go through this with a what to look for, how to do a checklist. Become aware of this. Become aware of it, because you're not out of the water. You're not out of the water yet. I've seen people go from healed, thinking they're healed, oasis, to right back to suicide, right back to drinking, right back to abuse, domestic violence. The oasis is deadly if you are not aware that you are in the oasis, because it catches you with your guard down. It also completely derails your trust. And then you take a massive setback. And in some cases, you have to restart your healing journey from the beginning. So, yeah. Thank you so much. And may the kindest of words always find you.